Florida lawmakers are almost a third of the way through their annual legislative session without a lot to show for it. Major policy decisions and the state budget are yet to be decided.
The session has already been marked from the start by a standoff between the House Speaker and the governor over Enterprise Florida's business incentive money. And with us today, two state senators from South Florida for a State of the Session update. Senator Rene Garcia is a Republican representing Hialeah. He sits on committees overseeing children, families, elder affairs, banking and insurance, and the judiciary. Senator Perry Thurston is a Democrat who represents much of Fort Lauderdale. His committee assignments include transportation, tourism and economic development, banking and insurance as well, education, and the judiciary too. Good morning and thank you for joining us.
Great to have you come in. All right, Senator Garcia, you were quoted late this week as saying, look, whiskey and Wheaties, the bill that would allow big box retailers and also Publix and other stores to sell liquor, wine, spirits in the same store in the same location. It moved forward, but you essentially said, hey, is this what we really came to do?
No, exactly, and I think, Perry, you know, Senator, when we got elected, we never heard that on the campaign trail. We never heard anything about whiskey, selling liquor, and getting rid of the law at the Publixes or at the Walmarts, making sure that people can have access to alcohol. And the funny thing is that this bill was fast-tracked not only in the Senate, it was fast-tracked in the House. So
Is that the result of lobbying?
Of course, it's big money was put into the system, and now you have these two bills that are coming through the process. And I think there's much bigger issues that we should be dealing with, like education, health care, criminal justice issues, reforming our criminal justice issues that we have, and health care. So those are the issues we need to be having.
I couldn't agree with Senator Garcia even more, because if you look at it, we've got the fast track of not only that bill, but we had a fast track of a stand your ground bill. I mean, we've already come to the floor, we've heard it in committees, and quite frankly, it's totally unnecessary. It takes lives and encourages people to take lives, and when you put that as your priority ahead of legislation to save and improve lives, it makes you wonder where exactly we're going.
Senator Thurston, just sort of lay it out there in lay terms. By turning around stand your ground, it forces the prosecution to prove the guilt or alleged guilt of a suspect in basically a violent incident, shooting, or some other assault.
Not only does it put the burden on the state attorney where it was on the defendant initially, it has the standard has also been increased, Michael. What you have is going from preponderance to the highest standard in the land, which is beyond to the exclusion of every reasonable doubt. And you're right, it's not just for shootings, every domestic violence incident, any criminal defense attorney is worth his weight is going to file this bill, and it's totally unnecessary.
For argument's sake, isn't the onus is on the prosecutor in criminal law anyway to make that beyond a reasonable doubt prediction? So why not just add this to it? What's wrong with that?
No, Glenna, but you know, we're innocent until proven guilty. That is the mantra of our criminal justice system. And why not have the same burden on the state as opposed that we have for everything else? And that's the way that I look at it. And I understand where Senator Thurston is going with this, that we changed we changed the preponderance of evidence. But the reality is that you're innocent until proven guilty. Let the state prove my guilt instead of having me prove my innocence in a court of law.
Let me tell you what's wrong with that. What's wrong with that is we're not talking about the ultimate decision. That burden still rests on the government. Now we're talking about a preliminary hearing, which is an immunity hearing, which means the person who shot the person who's dead will never even face a jury, will never even have to go into court. Right. So if you're talking about that immunity hearing, there are so many other cases where defendants, a suppression motion, an insanity motion, defendants always have to have the burden there. If you're trying to never see justice, you don't ever want to walk into a courtroom. So what we're encouraging people to do is to take the lives as opposed to anything else. And what they were saying on the floor is that dead men tell no lies. And you're encouraging that.
Where are the other gun bills? There were 3 or 4 different gun bills going through.
And you know, it's amazing that the gun bills are being heard at such an early stage, as Senator Garcia has indicated. We're hearing bills about taking your guns to the courthouse, bringing your guns into private schools.
But Senator, isn't it true, and Senator Garcia, that Senator Ani Terry Flores of South Miami-Dade is basically one of the two people, you or the other one, standing in the way of these gun bills, open carry, campus carry? You're not in favor of that.
No, I'm not, and I think we have to have a mental health component. I've always said very clear, we have to have a mental health component if we have any of these bills moving through the process. We just recently passed out of committee a bill that allows a person to bring their gun into a school that is adjacent to a church. But what folks don't understand is that right now you are allowed to bring a gun to church, and we're just trying to clarify what the law meant, and that bill just got out of Judiciary Committee this last week. But even with that, we have so many issues that we have to deal with, and one of them on the education front, trying to limit the amount of testing that goes on in schools. Right. That is something that we are trying to push heavily, and I think Senator Thurston, we've been working together on that to try to get that through, and yet we haven't had one committee hearing on that bill.
Even though there's huge popular support for that.
And there is huge popular support. The assessment in the Florida public school system, I think that we're moving in the right direction, but that needs to be a priority. How do we look at the assessment? There are changes that are in play, and those changes are going to be beneficial to public schools across the state of Florida. Right. One of the problems, though, is over in the House is more of a focus on increasing vouchers and funding going to private schools, and also the benefits that private schools will get by being able to take the investment dollars and put it into buildings.
Well, part of that, of course, is House Speaker Richard Corcoran, very powerful man and a very conservative one. And Senator Garcia, your boss in the Senate, your Republican colleague, Joe Negron, who was on this program a couple of weeks ago, he and Richard Corcoran get along, but on priorities for Senator Negron, the reservoir south of Lake Okeechobee to clean the water coming out of the lake, Richard Corcoran isn't really very excited about that.
No, not only Richard Corcoran, there's some senators are
I
not
think
too
Perry
excited.
Thurston isn't very excited.
I'm not too excited
that.
about that either. I mean, listen, I think we have to. I think we all agree here, whether Republican or Democrat, we agree that we have to protect the Everglades. Now, the issue that we're facing with the Everglades and with Lake Okeechobee is we have to think about what's happening with that runoff that's going east and west. And one of the problems that we see out in St. Martin County, if you look how many septic tanks are in St. Lucie County, you will understand that that's why you're getting a lot of that algae bloom. Part of the reason you're getting that algae bloom out west. But the reservoir, I really think it's a lot of money when we can be implementing, raising up the dike, help the structure of Lake Okeechobee. If you can raise up that dike, it'll cost less, and you can hold the same amount of water, if not more.
Septic tanks are important, but also people are important. We've met with the Glade Lives Matter people out in the Glades area. And the farmers. And they're concerned about the loss of a total industry, the closing of another mill, the jobs that they're going to lose. And this is one of the highest unemployment areas that there can be.
Yeah, and Senator Rubio, if I may say, came to the support of that point of view with some remarks this week, so he appears to be on board with you and people who live south of the lake. Absolutely. Well, that's going to be the final word. Thank you both, senators, for coming in.
Let's stay for one more block.
Oh, we've got one more block. All
We're going to be right back with more.
All right.
Well,
all right. Stay with us.
Can you stay?
I can.
Okay,
absolutely.
Welcome back live in our studio on this Sunday morning. Two leaders in the Florida Senate. We are talking about the current legislative session. Senator Thurston, give us your impressions about the impact on Florida, where there are more than 4 million people on Medicaid, 1.7 million people enrolled in Obamacare. What happens to them in light of the failure of the American Health Care Act?
Well, Michael, what I think you see is that in Florida, 1.7 million people just breathe a sigh of relief. And they understand that there's someone fighting for them to make sure that they can keep the health care that they need and that's been provided to them. So I think that we have to continue to work, but I think that some of the messages that have been sent down from Washington to Tallahassee, we'll have to step back and take a look at what we can do, because there are other states benefiting way more than the state of Florida is, but the immediate result is 1.7 million people in the state of Florida just breathed a sigh of relief.
You know where a lot of them live, in Senator Rene Garcia's district in
Absolutely.
Hialeah. Well, I mean, you've done a lot of work with the Medicaid issue in Florida, and still, without Medicaid expansion, there is still a struggle.
No, there's definitely a struggle, but I don't know if people are breathing a sigh of relief with this. The reality is that it needs to be fixed, and I'm disappointed that we couldn't get it built through Congress. But I think the mistake that's being made is the same mistake that Democrats did a couple of years ago when they just try to push a bill through. The best thing that you need to do is get people around the table, have a conversation, and figure out what needs to be done. Because there's still high premiums and high deductibles that people can't afford, and still they're really not covered. They have a piece of paper that says they're insured, but are they really insured? They're really not.
Well, see, I think that's why it's such a relief, because now it forces us to actually talk to each other. Part of the reason they don't have the coverage for deductibles and co-payments is because of the lawsuits that were put in place to take the ability to do that away. If we can work together and eliminate some of those objections and some of the sabotage that's been put in place for this program, the insurance companies are not just leaving, they're leaving because of the lawsuit that stopped them from being subsidized. And we should work with them in that. Let's work together.
Let's kind of go through a couple of big issues remaining for you and the Senate and the State House, and just get you to weigh in as briefly as you can. Medical marijuana. Florida voters overwhelmingly, 71%, said we believe that medical marijuana should be available for people with certain severe health conditions. Now, the rules are being written, but not very fast.
No, they're not, and I think this is one of these issues that are going to go down to the wire if not have a special session, because we have to implement it. If we don't implement it, then the Department of Health will come up with their own rules by August or September. The big issue that you have here is how many people do you allow to play? You know, whether you have 5 companies or 7 or 10 or 15 or 20, or open it up completely.
The bill is 7.
Yeah, right. And then the House I think the House wants to open it up completely. There's dialogue and conversations back and forth, and that's where the sticking point really is. It's really all monetary issue right now. It's not even trying to get the medical marijuana out to the people. It's just who can distribute it, purchase it, and sell it.
And the vertical integration, allowing the people, the 7, to have total access to distribution as well as cultivation. And if we could have some type of horizontal integration there where others would be available.
What do you mean horizontal integration?
Well, instead of a license right now allows you to do everything from cultivating to retail.
Right.
If there's no way that anyone can come in and say, well, I want to distribute, I want to participate in the retail end, you have to have that one license. You do everything. And some of the amendments that you see by Senator Jeff Brandes and others will allow at least some form of horizontal integration.
We go on in our little lightning round. Immigration bills passing through the Senate. Some of the immigration bills mirroring the federal bills to penalize sanctuary cities. And one that could be really troubling for South Florida, pulling out of the federal refugee resettlement, which essentially, I think, would take away benefits from Haitian nationals, Cuban nationals who come here under special circumstances. And where is that? The Senate passed those.
It came out of the House. The Senate right now, I think it's going through committee, but I have a serious problem with that, Glenna, because what they're trying to do now is pull away from this program and have the federal government contract out with the local NGOs and non-for-profits for those services instead of the money flowing through the state. I think it's a little disingenuous, because if you want to know where the immigrants are, then fund them through the state. Let them track them so you can know what the services that they're receiving. But what they're trying to do now is just play politics with it, and then at the end of the day, the ones going to get hurt the most is us down here in Miami-Dade County, which we benefit from those dollars greatly, and people need the services right now. So I think it's a little disingenuous what they're trying to do in the House, and I won't be able to support a plan
And some
like
of
that.
the bills that's designed to increase the penalty on those who are not citizens, those just are unconstitutional, and I don't think that they would survive the constitutional challenge.
Before we run out of time, we must ask about Enterprise Florida, the program that attracts companies to the state, relocate, and provides huge tax incentives. The governor wants, over and above operational cost, $83 million. House Speaker Richard Corcoran says that's corporate welfare. How does the Senate see it?
Well, it has been played as largely a battle between the Speaker and the Governor, but I would tell you that my colleagues on my side has long been suspicious of these incentives to attract business. If you look at before the Governor was elected, it was projected that in 2018 we would have an additional 1.1 million jobs. We're right about that now, but we're down $6.5 billion that we've spent towards this. So we have a concern.
The governor told us on Friday that of all of the new jobs created, a little less than 10% of those jobs are directly attributable to Enterprise Florida funding. Is it worth that?
No, look, I think it is. Look, I need to see those numbers, but the reality is that if we're competing with other states, I think we need to have a mechanism to be able to compete with those states and attract businesses into the state of Florida. And at the same time, not only attract those new businesses, but help those local businesses that are here as well. Do we need more transparency in Enterprise Florida? Absolutely, we can have that. But to eliminate Enterprise Florida and hinder our ability to compete with other states and attracting businesses and creating our workforce here, I think it's irresponsible.
Good point in which to end. Senator Rene Garcia, Senator Perry Thurston, great to have you come in. We'll come back at the end of the session and see what you all did up there.
After the break, we take all of this and more to the Powerhouse Roundtable. Stay with us.